Hello everyone! So today we do have a little bit of a different video. If you were wondering where the last part of the endurance ride is, I actually ended up losing a little bit of motivation to edit, so when I get around to it I will actually be uploading it as a members only episode. If you're interested in seeing that, the join button is below. But after the endurance ride, as much fun as it was, me and Queasy were thinking about looking at competition horses to lease or even to buy, so that perhaps we could really start showing. Don't worry, Jericho is still my forever horse, but I figured that it might be time to get him a friend. Honestly, I am looking for a horse that actually has prior training, is more experienced in either cross-country, endurance, jumping, or some kind of Western discipline. After many phone calls, Hanging Dog Ranch was our first stop. The owner of Hanging Dog Ranch is Nuggxtzz, who is an avid horse trainer and also does boarding at his ranch. I contacted him after I saw he was selling a couple of horses and booked to try them. Hanging Dog Ranch is located north of Strawberry and is just by Little Creek, and we all know what happened there. We arrived nice and early. I brought Queasy along with me to kind of get a second opinion. She didn't really take to any of the horses in the ads, so she was going to skip out on the trying and was just going to give me tips. Nuggxtzz told us he would be in the barn when we first arrived, so I went straight in, and he was actually already in there with the first horse named Kestrel already tacked up. We talked for a little bit and he just told me a little bit about Kestrel. I was already aware that she was a training dressage horse. She was around 15 years old, and little did I know she was one of the most beautiful horses I've ever seen. You can't see her too clearly here, the lighting isn't great, but she is beautiful. I was super excited to try her out, and Nuggxtzz was just kind of explaining her history and where she's been. So at Hanging Dog Ranch, they don't actually have an official arena. They tend to utilize their paddocks to work the horses in, and actually Little Creek. Now I actually really like this because Nuggxtzz was telling me that they train the horses to understand that even when there aren't barriers, even when they're out in wild terrain, that it's still work time, that it's still time to behave and not to just run around. And I noticed that's something I need to work on with Jericho, because as soon as he's out of a enclosed arena, he kind of loses his mind a bit, but that was really reassuring to know that Nuggxtzz was training his horses like this. Now you can see Kestrel a little bit better here. She's a gorgeous dappley chestnutty palomino. She's got great big white socks on her, and her mane and tail is a really beautiful blonde. I was super excited to try her out. Now, even though Nuggxtzz reassured me that Kestrel is a very well-trained horse, I am not at all a fan of just jumping on horses that don't know me and that I don't know. So I decided to just give her some cuddles a little bit, get her kind of used to me and how I react and how I feel. And I also did a little bit of leading as well, so that we could kind of catch each other's rhythm a little bit, and just so that she would feel more comfortable, because when you're trying horses, it's two strangers meeting, and although you're super invested into trying the horse may not completely understand what's going on, so it's good for them to also feel comfortable around you. She is a gorgeous baby though, I have to admit. I got the side shot of her, she was throwing her head around a little bit, just saying hello, and she was absolutely beautiful. Now when I decided to actually mount up, she was super well behaved. She stood, which was really nice to see. A lot of horses tend to move forward. I did do a quick dismount to check everything was okay there. Then I remounted again, and everything seemed perfect. She was so well behaved. She stood perfectly perfectly still. So I made sure to give her a little pat so that she knew everything was good, and then we started off. One thing about dressage horses that I absolutely love is she already went straight into a lovely walking rhythm. She was a little bit laid back, but as soon as I asked her to bring it a little bit more on the active side, she gave that to me. As you can see, the arena is a little bit distracting, as in the terrain is a bit bumpy, and there are actually other horses in this paddock, but they're horses that she knows, so she didn't seem to mind them in there. And I was just kind of feeling her under the saddle. She wasn't super loose, but I wasn't too worried about her tension. She was holding herself really well, and I can just say that I really enjoyed the ride on her. Now, I'm not quite used to being this close to the ground. Jericho is actually really tall. Kestrel was about 15 hands, which is about an average standard bred size, and I would say overall she did incredibly well. She was very attentive to when I was moving the reins, and she really quite enjoyed my pats in between. She had her ears forward almost the entire time. She wasn't really checking up on me. She was looking forward as if to say, where are we going? Where's my next turn? Like, just let me know. And I really loved that about her. Nyx did suggest that I take Kestrel outside of the arena to try out some faster paces. Now, normally I would completely reject this because this is a horse I am not familiar with and is not familiar with me. However, I am 100% sure of their training, and I really did want to try her out properly since she is genuinely a horse I was super interested in. I also had Queasy watching me, so I knew that if anything happened, that I would have a friend on the way to help. I really actually pushed Kestrel here because I took her up through the river, so not only was she against the current, but the footing can be quite slippery on these little rocks, but she took it like a trooper. I'm really impressed. This kind of exercise really shows how good their footing is and how muscular and fit they are since they're going upstream against the resistance of the water. But she did super well. Now I was really excited to try her out at a trot and maybe even a canter because I was so sure of her footing. As you could see there, the transition was absolutely flawless. She was really responsive. I didn't have to give her too much of an indication that we were going faster, that we were pushing forward. She was super intuitive and was really listening to me, and I really enjoyed that. Normally I'm having to try and get Jericho's attention to actually listen to me and the changes that I want. I did manage to gather up some confidence and take her into a canter, which, as you saw there, was a beautiful transition. Again, not too much needed behind there. She was listening very well. I at no point felt unstable, even though this terrain can be a little bit unpredictable with its little rocks and canyons. But again, I felt super safe in the saddle. I didn't want to canter for too long just because I'm still a little bit scared of this area since what happened to me and Jericho in Little Creek last time. But Kestrel never ever made me feel unsafe, and Queasy the whole time was telling me about how she looked and her form, and she just basically said that Kestrel has a brilliant form. All of this playing in my mind though as positives did mean that I knew that Nyx was going to ask for quite a high price. So I trotted her around a little bit more, kind of tested out things with her, and eventually I did pull up next to Queasy to have a little bit of a discussion. Nyx wasn't around so that we could properly have a talk about Kestrel. Queasy really likes her, but I personally kind of felt like I couldn't work with Kestrel just because my dressage skills aren't high enough. Kestrel is actually more experienced in the dressage section than I am, and I was actually looking for more of an eventing horse, something that I could really trust and take out into a competition. Queasy did suggest that I keep Kestrel in mind and perhaps think about taking some flat work and dressage lessons to improve my own skill, and I did quite like that idea, but again, I was more looking for a horse that could push me into more an eventing or even an endurance kind of competition style. But Kestrel is a wonderful mare, and I was really happy I got to try her. Honestly, at the end of my testing series, I'll let you guys decide on which horse you think would suit me best. Now, as beautiful as Kestrel is, I don't think she's quite what I am looking for. So after our little test ride, Nuggxtzz came and got Kestrel, and he told us that we could just have a look around the ranch while he went and got our second horse, who is named Hestia. Now she's actually a 12-year-old jumper prospect who I was very, very excited to meet. You'll see her when she comes through, but from her photos she looked absolutely gorgeous. While we were waiting for Nuggxtzz to go and get Hestia, I actually found a little friend. So I didn't know this at the time, but this was actually Nuggxtz's Project Mustang makeover horse. So this little guy was super friendly. I think he was about 2 weeks into training at the time, but I recently also discovered that Nuggxtz won the Mustang makeover, so that's really reassuring to know that a trainer can take a completely wild horse and turn it into something that people would actually want to purchase. Nuggxtz then brought out Hestia, and I cannot tell you how excited I was when I first saw her. She's this absolutely gorgeous light grey horse. Her stride was just so powerful. She had a western saddle on at the time, but later on I did ask Nuggxtz to switch it out for a more appropriate jumping saddle, but it was fine when I was just testing her out for gaits. But she is a gorgeous horse. I love the look of her, and she wasn't quite as friendly as Kestrel, but she definitely didn't mind being around me. I did kind of the same thing as before and just gave her lots of pats just to say hello. When I first mounted up, what I noticed was it had suddenly become really cloudy, and these were like dark black clouds that looked like it was going to rain. So just another thing that I really am not comfortable with is trying horses in extreme weather, just because it can be dangerous since I don't know these horses. So I was a little bit nervous to continue, but for the minute it seemed fine. Back on Hestia though, she felt really powerful under the saddle. I could tell she had a lot of muscle. She was really fit and had been worked really, really well. She wasn't quite as attentive as Kestrel was. She did require a little bit more leg aid, but again, she wasn't difficult to handle and she wasn't a pain in the butt like Jericho is. Now, the problem with trying a jumping prospect horse is that you actually have to jump them, and unfortunately, just as I was leaving the arena, Nuggxtz was telling me that she'll be absolutely fine in any sort of weather, and it started absolutely bucketing it down. Queasy was laughing at me all the way from the stables, and I thought to myself, I can either just turn around and reschedule, book another day, or I can see how Hestia really does in rough weather. Now, I would not recommend doing this. This is not the safe option, but I thought, heck, I've driven all the way up here. We might as well actually try this horse out. Once I got her into a trot, she did feel pretty forward. I think the weather had her a little bit excited. She was kind of testing me, I could tell. She was kind of seeing how much control I actually had over her, which is good in some horses in that you know that they're very powerful and very intelligent as well, but it did mean that I had to really show her that I was here to support her. We were both going to work together to try this out. Her trot was really strong once she kind of settled into it. She was a little bit spooky, as in she was looking up at the sky, but at no point did she spook, which was nice. I kicked her into the canter. This canter was much faster than Kestrel's. It wasn't quite as collected. Saying that though, her canter was incredibly balanced. It wasn't quite as collected, but I did feel like she had really sure footing, and her rhythm was actually really, really nice as well. I didn't feel like I was getting tossed around or anything like that. So at this point I did get a little bit more confident and decided to take her over some of the more interesting terrain just to see how she reacted to things, and I was actually eyeing up a couple of the jumps. So I was told by Nuggxtz beforehand that there was a little log jump that she had done many, many times. Okay, that was actually really cool, so I'm gonna go ahead and show you that again. That was a lightning strike that happened literally across from us. I don't think I remember catching this on camera, but there was a lot kind of going on. So this here is me choosing to slow her down, not because she's spooked, but because I'm literally spooked. I've never seen this sort of weather up close and certainly never really ridden in it. The weather we get down at McFarland tends to be quite light showers. Later on, Nuggxtzz did tell me that these sort of summer storms do come through here quite regularly, and they can be quite harsh, but they also clear up, which is literally what they did right now. I had Queasy go and check the footing, and I decided to take this log that I had a look at. Hestia took the lead on this and absolutely floated over it. I was so happy with how she took off and landed, her striding beforehand. She had a lot of power behind her. I had to make sure that I wasn't going to be left behind, so I was working with her. I was so happy that I took her over it once again, just to see if anything was different, but once again she flew over it like it was absolutely nothing. Now, I am aware that she has been over this jump in training many times, but I think we have to bear in mind that the footing is terrible, and I am a rider that she has never worked with before, so she did incredibly well. This horse has absolutely blown my expectations out of the water. I was super impressed. And did Queasy manage to convince me to take her round one more time so that she could get a sunset shot? Maybe that happened, yes, but honestly at this point I trusted Hestia enough to be able to handle it. Honestly, we had just been through so much worse, so I just kind of let her have fun with this one. I kind of relaxed into it a little bit more, and this was so much fun. As much as I did love Kestrel, Hestia just made the ride so much more interesting and fun. Here she is, lovely strides. She took it just beautifully. I'm so impressed. Queasy was telling me the entire time that we looked great, which I was so happy to see. She did say that Hestia looked like an absolute muddy little goat, but that is completely fine. That's kind of what happens with greys. And if you've watched the first couple episodes, I have already stated that Jericho does dust up like a grey anyway, so what's just another one? But I was so impressed with Hestia, genuinely. I had such high hopes. Now, at this point, I was considering just straight up buying her, but I've already booked some other viewings and testings of horses. I wasn't going to jump to any decisions. Plus, I ended up finding out that this was going to be a hard sale for Nuggxtzz because he's very attached to Hestia, and I honestly don't blame him. This horse is brilliant, but I did want to honor the other tryouts first. But I think Hestia is a very strong contender for what I'm looking for in a horse. She got lots of pats and lots of rubs. I just kept telling Nuggxtzz how impressed I was with her because she was just absolutely brilliant. So that was the two horses that we were going to try at Hanging Dog Ranch. Again, super impressed with the training on both of them. This is such a lovely location as well, so that was really nice. Nuggxtzz told us we could come up and train anytime that we wanted to. He even said he'd have a look at Jericho for me if I was interested in some extra training with him, which I can't say that I immediately took up, but I definitely thought about it. But yes, that concluded our day. After this, we did go home and discuss things with Queasy. She has very strong opinions, as she does, because she's Queasy. But all in all, this was a very productive day. I was super happy with the riding, and personally, I feel really happy in myself with how I handled the horses and how I felt confident enough to try horses out to the degree that I did today. So in the next episode, I hope to be traveling to different locations and seeing if there are any more horses that catch my eye. Now, I am strictly only going to be purchasing one horse, so I'm going to have to be very aware of the decision I make. Once again, a huge thank you to Nuggxtzz for letting us try his horses, and once again, a thank you to Queasy for being such a pain in the butt, but I really love you. I hope you guys enjoyed. stay positive, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.